The conversation you are about to hear was recorded in 2020 during the height of the global pandemic. And now, Global Comedy Studios presents, Is This a Bad Time to Talk?
All right, I'm going to call Mark Malkoff, a very nice comedian. I'm trying to punch in his number as I'm saying this. He does a podcast talking to folks who were working on the Johnny Carson show. He's got a show he's done called Two Juice Minimum, where he interviews kids. It's like a kids' talk show. He's done some amazing stunts and bits and performance art type pieces, but he is such a sweet, kind guy, loved by so many people, and he's talked to some amazing people in his own right. But he's also worked on the Colbert Report, so let me give him a call. Hello?
Hello, it is Mark Malkoff.
Hi, Mark Malkoff. This is Ali. Is this a bad time to talk?
Not at all. I haven't heard your voice in just a couple minutes, so this is good, yeah.
I know. I just called you to test the call, but now we're recording. It seems okay.
It does, but you never know.
You know how these things work where it's like, I remember I was talking to Michael Shannon and it cut out like twice and I had to call him back. So it may cut out. By the way, I just have to inform you, this phone call is being recorded. Are you cool with that?
I'm cool with it. And like whatever happens, that's fine. I have my own podcast and this stuff happens all the time. And, very rarely do I leave everything in like real time. But when I have, it's been fun just to leave all the days. Because like we know with like late night shows now, they take out every little detail that's wrong, but like the Letterman Carson years when they kept everything in, I thought was the best.
I think, and that's the way I want to do this, where it's just like, this is it, it's raw, it's real, it's for the young Mark Malkoff out there who listens to this and he goes, hey, that's me. I grew up in New York. I also like this kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I just listened to your Mort Saul podcast with Mort Saul for your Carson because I wanted to listen to a little bit of it. And the research you do, it's phenomenal.
That's nice. Yeah, it was one of those things when I started doing the podcast. I just, for me to feel comfortable as an interviewer, and I've done over 275 of these things, I just have to go in knowing as much as humanly possible because I can't wing it. Like certain people like Mark Maron with his podcast can wing it, but I think I go to sometimes I go to extremes with my actual work, but with the research I do, like people are sometimes pretty shocked how much I know.
Well, I mean, it's amazing the eclectic level of work you've done. I mean, to me, when I look at your career and the scope of it, it's just so like a buffet. And we'll get to some of the bits you've done with the, Starbucks, all of Starbucks in a day, with, the Colbert Report. But, part of this is for me, I mean, this to me is born out of the pandemic. I don't know if I would have called you and taken up your time in the BC world. But, in this world, I'm like, well, let me call up people who I like, who I'm just curious, how did you get to where you are? And so, when you go through the landscape of your life, where were you born? Like right now, I'm in New York City. Are you in New York as well right now?
I am. Lovely Astoria.
And so, but you were born in New York, right?
I wasn't. I was born outside of New York in Englewood, New Jersey. Okay. I believe same hospital as Brooke Shields and John Travolta, but I don't have that as proof. But I was born there, and then my dad got relocated. Or got a job rather in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and that's mostly where I grew up. I was outside of Chicago for a while too. Till fourth grade, I was on Bozo, which was like the greatest day of my elementary life. But so I've been a little transient. But then Hershey, Pennsylvania, for the vast majority.
You mean you were on the Bozo TV show?
Oh yes, this is what happened. So my parents moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania. Or just outside when I'm 3 years old, they move outside of Chicago, Arlington Heights. And like, I'm trying to think of what you would equate the Bozo show to, getting ticketing. Hamilton's be such a breeze. Saturday Night Live is really, really hard, but these tickets, I mean, they were 8 years, and like every parent, it was those Cabbage Patch dolls in the 80s where parents would go crazy for them. These were those tickets. So like when I got to go, it was like, I just couldn't believe it. It was like one of the greatest days ever as a kid.
So, I mean, count that as one of your bifurcation points of like a moment where you saw something and thought, this is cool, I want to do this?
Yeah, but even before that, like when I was in elementary school in Arlington Heights, I have it here. I actually bought it on Amazon. I would check out the same book and this is kindergarten, first grade, every single time from the school library. And it was called What Goes On in the TV Studio. And it would be all, it's all like behind the scenes of Bozo. So it's like the Bob Bell years, Fraser Thomas and stuff. And I was so fascinated what went on in television, and then to be there, and they let me say like do a promo for it. That they chose me for some reason. I got to say "Don't miss what's next on Bozo" and "Red Light," a cue card, and I got to play a game, and I won Monopoly and Slurpees, like 30 Slurpees from 7-Eleven. So I mean, I had the bug. It was just like I think when I walked into WGN on Bradley Place when I was in third grade, I think it was just like, this is it. It just kind of exploded from there in terms of like what I wanted to do and where my mind was focused.
And was it because you watched a lot of TV, or did your family watch TV? Was it a funny family, or it was one of those moments of grace where you just happened to find something that you really enjoyed at a moment in time?
Yeah, like my dad showed me a lot of comedy, like introduced me to like Jonathan Winters when I was like 4 or 5 and Peter Sellers. So like lots of entertainment. It's a mad world. So I knew who all these people were, and television, the box was my thing. I mean, back then especially, I mean, you had in Illinois where I was, you had like the 3 major stations. You had PBS, you had Channel 32, which I think became a Fox affiliate, and then we got Aurora, Illinois. We got Channel 60, which was like sometimes would work in morning. So there weren't many options, and it was always this mystery. What went on behind the scenes? Like the book basically just gave a little bit, but it was like, it's like going to the magic show every single night and wondering and trying to figure out how the magician's doing it. And for years, you just have no idea, but you're hooked.
And so along the way, were there teachers who encouraged you, or was there a friend that you had who was like your early audiences or sounding boards in high school and elementary school?
Yeah, there were some really nice people. Like, I was a bad student. Like, just in terms of, I would work harder than all my friends who were A students to get like, I don't know, like B-, C's. Like, I've always had to outwork people to get things. But for that example, and I just, back then, it was like basically, they wouldn't say it, but they basically were, it was known that, your grades were meant how smart you were and what career was going to be. It was that was going to be your life. So I just grew up thinking there's something wrong with me. And then I had a teacher in 10th grade named Sue Altman who, because I was always good with the creativity and the English. She was the first teacher ever to pull me aside and just be like, your stuff is really, really good, and just took a notice to me, and it was like that the rest of high school. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. It's, it was just like my jaw kind of dropped because I had no confidence in myself, and that's always been a theme. But that moment was like, oh, maybe I'm not. There isn't something wrong with me that I get bad grades, and maybe I'll be able to do okay.
And her name was Sue Altman?
Altman, so ALTLAND. So that was high school, and I had a bunch of other high school people that helped me. I mean, Hershey High School. My writing skills, I had a problem with writing as well, and my teacher, Tom Zimmerman, this was when I was like in 11th or 12th grade. He helped me with my essay for college because I could do it, but he really, really shaped it and helped put my words into something. And the college that I picked, I had no business applying according to my guidance teacher. So like she's like, this isn't going to happen. So he basically helped me do that. And then I just, it really changed my life.
In which college was that?
Okay. So I went to NYU, which now I would never, my grades never would have gotten. And my SATs were, it's like, I think 300 points, 250 points lower, SATs lower than they required. And it was like a full letter grade, more than that below what they wanted. So, I mean, I've always had to push harder and go beyond to make things happen. So it was one of those things where for NYU students, if you wanted to be at NYU, which I did, for acting students, they made exceptions. So my dad and mom drove me up to NYU. I did 2 monologues to try to get in, and like we had this really nice theater teacher that helped us. But I went to him, and he like didn't know any monologues, and he had no idea how to audition. So it was like this blind thing that I went in New York. I had I'm very persuasive sometimes, and in this thing, I talked my way in the interview. Like I wowed them with that. I wowed them with the essay, and just pushed. And I couldn't believe it. It was like Wonka getting the golden ticket, but it was like they're like you're in, but you have to be on academic probation for I don't know how long. But if I got like less than a C-, I was gone. So they were very, very like watch yourself.
But that's a testament to like knowing as a young person, look, I just have to work harder. A lot of people would have just given up and not even tried. But you knew like, look, I've got to work as hard or harder than the other people to get B's and C's. Where did that work ethic come from?
I don't know. It was just one of those things where I don't know. And the people I admire, like my dad, and I would check out books would just say that they would have to persevere and like, persistent. And, like I didn't know a full scope of how hard it was for a lot of people, but I definitely know, and I don't even remember certain individuals that just have like one thing after another where the door was shut and people were like, you can't do this. And it was like, when I was in middle school, up until middle school, people would call me fat and stuff. And it was that one summer in 7th grade that I just worked out and just changed some of my diet. But I was working out to the point where my friend Derek Weaver, his mom, didn't recognize me, and she called my mom worried, but I was totally fine. But it was one of those things where like all my friends are like 0% body fat, those growing up, and it was just that was surprising. Like that was definitely, it's like these little things that I was able to do kind of gave me more confidence.
Wow. So you were a heavy kid for a while.
They called me fat. Yeah, I mean, it was. I knew I was fat. I knew I was heavy. I wouldn't say definitely. I knew that I was heavy when I was in Arlington Heights on baseball, playing Little League baseball, where like multiple adults pointed to someone and said, "Mark, that he looks exactly like you," and the guy was fat. And I looked at myself and I said, "Oh, that's how people perceive me." And then the taunts started. And, that was up until like 4th grade. And then the middle school years, forget about it. I mean, middle school, and it just never seemed like it was going to end, was the absolute worst. And I think a lot of people probably had that opinion as well, the cruelty that those couple years.
And so what did you do to start losing weight? I mean, again, to have the wherewithal as a 7th grader to be like, I want to get it together. But how do you even know what to do?
That's hilarious. I started drinking. I started drinking lots of like, it's probably unhealthy now. It is, but like, I would drink diet iced tea that had sugar, so there were no calories, and I would like chug the stuff, and I would ride my bike a lot, and like, my parents and I, like, we'd have like a Friday night thing, and they'd be eating like nachos with cheese, and I just wouldn't do it. I would just like, for whatever reason, and they'd been kind of make fun of me, but they admired what I was doing, and I definitely did that, and I gave up some foods, and I didn't know the outcome. I mean, I think all of us try to picture that outcome, but yeah, when that actually happened, and a lot of people were like, I can't believe this is Mark. Happened. That definitely was good. And oh yeah, I was a big wrestling WWF Hulk Hogan fan in 7th grade or 6th grade. So I was given the Hulkamania workout, which was 2 5-pound dumbbells, and I would do. And I'm not making this up. I would do at least like 500 to 1,000 on each arm, and like by the time that the summer ended, I was thin and I had the biggest arms. It'd be my right arm. It's funny. My right arm was like really big, flexing. Like people couldn't believe it. My left arm, since I'm left-handed, I don't think I did as much, and it was like basically a normal left hand bicep, left bicep, and the right one. People couldn't believe. So I was definitely doing the weights. I was, as Hulk Hogan says, take same prayers, whatever, vitamins and stuff like that. But was definitely a good learning lesson, and just a lot of those things started to follow and give me just a little bit of a blueprint, a roadmap for what I had to do.
It's interesting because you've done so much. It's hard to to look at everything you've done. But two things you've mentioned thus far. One, getting in shape as a seventh grader, and I saw the video you did, or the performance piece you did, where you wanted abs in 30 days, and you did it.
I couldn't believe that. Yeah.
I mean, and so did you think that might have come about because of that experience in childhood, or how did that come about, that performance art piece?
Well, the ab thing, and it's like the photos are real, the video is real. I didn't think I could do that because I wasn't fat, but I still had stuff on me where it was noticeable. But I don't know. I think a lot of people feel like this. But I feel like I was dismissed a lot of times when I hit success. A lot of people dismissed me. I would get it a lot, and it would kind of fuel me to go further. Somebody's like, "There's no way you can do this, or this is impossible," and I would go. I mean, it would be so much work, and maybe it would work and wouldn't, but I started to get enough of those in my belt, and it was just like, what can I do for myself that I'm like, I can't even imagine, but I'm just going to see what it takes. And I talked to one of my friends who's a trainer, and I said, is this at all possible for me to get six-pack abs? I had to lose, I think it was 14, 15 pounds, maybe something like that. And he's like, I can get it to you, but it's not going to be pleasant. And I had to eat, 330 hard-boiled egg whites in a month or something? The diet was ridiculous, and working out every single day. And it was not a pleasant month. But yeah, when we finally got it, I just, again, one of those jaw-dropping moments. I'm like, I can't believe I look like this. But, no substitution for the hard work.
Could you walk me through, a day of, what were the abs routines? Were you doing crunches, leg lifts? What were you eating? And what was one day like? Because this is as fascinating as anything, I think, for people.
Oh, yeah.
Getting abs like that.
The thing that I had no idea about was it was more about weights. The weights, way more than the crunches. We do crunches, but it was more getting the weight off, because everybody apparently has those six-pack abs of just getting down there. So I'd wake up in the morning. I was allowed to have black coffee. That was my morning, but I never was a coffee person. I was always tea. So I got addicted to black coffee every morning, and I would have to eat hard-boiled egg whites. And this was the first time I ever had hard-boiled egg whites. I've never been an egg person. I've never had an omelet. My mom said I rejected eggs right away. So this thing eating the hard-boiled egg whites would make me feel nauseous. But I would eat that. I put salt and pepper on it, which did little to nothing. I'd eat all the egg whites. I was only allowed to have fruit every 7 days and limit. Same with oatmeal, steel cut oats every 7 days, a little bit. So it was basically steamed vegetables. I'm trying to think what else I did, but it was protein. I had to have a protein shake, and I had to wake up in the middle of the night for a while too to have, because it really is important when you're getting the protein. And that was my diet. And then I would go to work out with my friend, and he just kicked my butt. I wanted him to. I told him, I'm like, just no easy going on this. And it was definitely a lot of weights, push-ups, and the cardio. I can do it now, but at the time I was not a big cardio person. And he would just get me up there. I'm like, I don't know, he'd start 3 or 4 miles an hour and get up to 12, and I just kicked my butt. But that endurance and my biceps, the way I looked during it as it was progressing, my friends and people were couldn't believe it. One of my friends' wives was turning to the husband and see my friend and would be like, see, you could do this. And he just kind of was eating his chocolate bar and just winced. But so yeah, that was it. I still didn't think 30 days. I am a man of faith, and I thought it could be possible. But when you're still, after 10 days, you're still not losing enough weight, and you can still see all the fat. It's how is this possible? How is this going to happen?
But it did.
It did in 28 days out of necessity. I was able to get the weight off, and it was just like I was eating enough calories, but it was just very extreme what I was eating. I had to take a trip on day 29, so I had 28 days with him, and it was one of those things I think we just have to make happen. Oh, I want to also point out I've been a vegetarian since I was in 7th grade, so halfway through, because basically like all his friends that are trainers, when they found out I was a vegetarian, are like, good luck with that, because apparently it's really hard for a vegetarian to get without the meat to get the 6-pack. So halfway through, I was just really scared I wouldn't have an ending, because I was doing comedy videos for a site. I was getting paid to do this content. I'm like, I need an ending. So I started eating tuna fish. It's like the first time in forever, decades, I don't even know how long, eating that. And that probably did help me. But just like the whole month, I would overhear people on the train talking about food and salad. Like I never noticed it before. Like I'd stare at people eating food just when they went by me and obsessed with food. Like my dreams, I was really disciplined in my dreams. Even like I'd eat a cookie in my dream and I'd realize what I was doing and spit the cookie out. Every single time I would spit the cookie and the cake out. So it was an all-consuming thing. And it was definitely the unpleasant stuff was the eggs. And apparently when you do this diet, it's very gaseous. So the wife was probably not thrilled about that. She liked how I looked, but it is something about that when in your mind at first, like when you start beginning, you're like, okay, I can't see this. Like, I know why people are saying this is impossible, but I know that anything is possible. And then when you get there, there's just something, when you see it happen and everybody's in awe, it just gets you thinking bigger. Like what you think is possible just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And those are a lot of things that just kept happening to me, and I just kept trying to push myself. And I would fall on my face, all the time. Nobody hits 1,000. Like Ted Williams hit 400, and that was like unheard of in baseball. But yeah, definitely from those things, it just kind of propelled me to take bigger swings, bigger chances, and just really go for things that a lot of people didn't think possible.
Where do you think this idea of anything is possible came from in your life?
When I was a kid in Hershey, I just had really big aspirations and dreams in my head, and it's just like not everybody. My parents were actually really encouraging, but everybody was just like, I'd say what I wanted to do or what I was thinking, and people would just like everything to dissuade me. Like there's only a few jobs, and you have to know people and all this stuff, and how hard it is, and like cutthroat, and like it was all these things in my head. But I'm like, well, it happens to somebody, and I just tried to block those voices out of my head. It wasn't easy. Like sometimes those voices won. Sometimes my own, inner voice would win, and it was definitely a struggle. But I had enough things happen over time during that period where just like little things would add up here and there and just made me realize that this is possible. And then I just kind of realized the rest of my life was probably, there's a decent chance it was going to have to be like that as well.
Wow. And then, so you get to NYU, and
yeah.
What's the experience like there? Are you meeting people, collaborating, or are there teachers who are, you're living in New York City. That's exciting,
I was a very shy person. I still am. It's strange because I can go out and, talk to whatever people, like 1,000 people. But beforehand, I'm like, even just like meeting people I don't know, I'm really, really shy. So the NYU thing I think it took me maybe 6 months to be able to like actually have some decent relationships. It was terrifying. Like all my friends went to Penn State, and I thought it was like the biggest mistake of my life. And like the whole thing, like once you pick one major and you're 18, there's no turning back. And for some reason, that's what I believe. And I heard like basically that you just have to figure out what you're going to do at that age. And I knew what I wanted to do, but it was just to see so many people that wanted to do the same thing in one room I'd never seen before. And it was just, I just didn't have confidence. And there were so many people there at NYU, and I think that that's probably in every profession, that it was like American Idol. They couldn't do it, but they had so much confidence. And I would just see that the confidence that they had, and I hadn't seen them really do anything. And it was just such an intimidating place to be, such an intimidating, scary place to be for a long while.
So, I mean, while you're there at NYU, you're experiencing New York City. What shows are going on? I mean, what's like the first jobs you start getting that make you feel like, okay, this is possible?
Well, I was an intern on, it was like one of the, I think it's the only internship I could get. It was one of the, it was not a good little daytime show in the history of daytime, but I was an intern on 57th Street near CBS for the Sally Jesse Raphael show, and I had to sign her autograph sometimes in red Sharpie because she has red glasses, and I remember putting the heart over the A in Sally, and I had to babysit, or not babysit, but I had to watch the troubled teens because they would get out of control and do stuff like, I remember one of them threw milk out a window and hit somebody in the head like a businessman and tried to, so it was like, it was crazy over there. Like, I mean, doing the internship was just like what was going on during the actual show. It was very, very strange, but it was good to be on set, and there were a few okay people there.
Wow, so this is happening during NYU or after?
That's when I was like, I think I was a junior. Yes, I was. And then the second semester after that, and I was so happy to leave my red Sharpie and just everything back at Sally Jesse. And then this really wonderful guy, as an NYU internship coordinator, got me an internship because I really wanted to intern at Spin City because it was a huge hit on ABC. Michael J. Fox. It was like network television, filmed in New York City. I didn't know exactly where they were, and I just like, please, can you make this happen? And it was like 3 or 4 days kept checking in, and he just couldn't. Back then, no internet. It was like, again, a giant mystery, and a lot of these shows didn't publish their numbers. Finally, after 4 days, he's like, Mark, I got the number. And I got to go there for an interview with Chelsea Piers, and remember being terrified of that, and dressing really nice, and then of course everybody's in jeans, and I did that for 2 semesters, and that was one of the best things I ever did. I mean, I think that was actually my entire senior year. I did 2 semesters there, and it was that was definitely a huge impact on my life. The people that I met, the people that really, really cool to me, and just see this what kind of happens behind the scenes in entertainment, like well-known people who would be guest stars and the people would just not want to work with, or just terrible behavior, and just the open bar parties we had every week as Gary Goldberg, who created Family Ties, just like the extravagant money that there was, and just to be led into this world, it was definitely eye-opening and one of the best things that happened to me.
Wow. So you get to meet Richard Kind?
Yeah, I actually had a bunch of interaction with him. I see him from time to time, but yeah, Richard was there, and he was definitely one of the funniest people. I mean, Second City background. So I remember us talking about Chicago. I remember when Del Close passed away, we talked about that. I remember a bunch of stuff when he was there, but just watching them rehearse, I mean, it was unbelievable. Richard was one of the funniest people over there. And in terms of like sitcom actors, like Michael J. Fox is like Michael Jordan. In terms of multicam actors, what that guy's ability is, I don't think he ever took acting classes. I mean, watching that guy, I mean, was watching like anybody at the top of their field that you look at, that makes it look so easy, to the point where people are like, I think I could do that, but almost very few people can do it, and that was him.
Wow. And so after NYU ends, you stay in New York City. What are like some of the first jobs you're getting that you start building your resume from? Oh
gosh, first of all, I would call back then, because no email again. I mean, people had it, but it was rare. I went through my Rolodex or whatever it was and called every single person I knew, and I was like, if I just am persistent enough, I'll get something, at least something. I needed something, just a little bit of something, and I answered phones as this Broadway marketing company. They did marketing for a lot of those places, and I did not like it. It was not a good job. I got to talk to cool people sometimes that called like that I knew that were well known, but it was one of those things like, how do I get out of this? And then this is the weirdest thing. This is a very strange thing. Like, both of us are Dave Letterman fans. Like, if you call yourself a comedian, it's very hard not to, and you grew up in a certain age, not admire Letterman. And I used to go to the show when I was a kid in high school. I would get a note. My mom, Mark, is going to New York City for an educational trip, and I'd go to late night, and it was just like this thing where I'm like, this is the coolest thing. And like, when I got to college, Letterman was the hottest thing in television. Go up to like the stage door and just kind of watch everything. So it was like, I really, in my head, I'm like, I want to be there. I want to work there. But again, it's the lottery, X amount of jobs. And I had done just a little TV stuff here and there, but it was just like a day here, a day there on like these really small shows. But one of the guys I met, Dana Kennerson, who kept me employed for a long time as a day job, who's a wonderful man, he told me, I met with him, he's like, I don't have a position here. And I think the show was Late Line, Al Franken's sitcom at Kaufman Astoria. He's like, I have nothing now, but I think I might have something for you. And then he revealed what it was and set me up with an interview, which was Letterman. And I was, part of me was just like, I couldn't believe it, but part of me was just like, I was terrified. I mean, I wanted to be over there so bad, and it was not like a glamorous position by far, but it was one of those things where just to like go inside and see what went on, because Letterman was one of those people you never know what went behind the scenes on that show for the most part. So I went over there and wore a suit, and they hired me for the audience department. I was never a page, but I shared an office with a bunch of people on the 8th floor, and then I got my own office with one other person, and just being there on the 8th floor and going to the conference room and just watching Dave rehearse on the feed, and just go. I was one of the rare people that actually got to go down for the show sometimes, because Letterman had this rule that if you worked on the show, if you weren't necessary, you couldn't be down there. You couldn't, if you left the show, if you worked for Dave at any point, you couldn't be in the audience because it might throw him off. So a lot of people that worked at Letterman for 20 years, they had never been in the studio until Letterman's final show. He let people down there. So it was definitely good to go down there and watch Dave's warm up and just kind of take everything in. But the atmosphere, I met a lot of amazing people, and it's helped me, but the atmosphere, maybe some people have heard, it was not good. I mean, and if that atmosphere is there, if somebody's in a really good mood, it's hard to fight that energy and then some of the negativity. I mean, I said this on a podcast recently. I didn't see, there were people who I'd run into, I'd see all the time, who I never saw smile. I don't know what the show did. There were certainly people like Jill Lederman, who's the executive producer of Kimmel, who was pure sunshine, and I've told her there were some people like that, but for the most part, the average person, not so much. So it was one of those things where I was so excited to be like backstage in the airlock, and the security guard Stephanie would she could see the panic on my face because I was just back there so nervous, and she's like, Mark, you work here, you're allowed to be here. And it was definitely one of those things. It took me, that was an adjustment to kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm one of them, because I was just a huge fan. And at the same time, what I learned is people that work at TV shows, a lot of them are just enormous fans of the show and just the medium in general. But I didn't know that at the time. And so that just took a little bit of time.
Wow. And then at some point you got a job on Colbert.
Okay, so I left Letterman after 11 months and 15 days. I gave my 2 weeks earlier, but they asked me if I could stay. And it was funny that the 2 times I saw Letterman the whole time, one at the holiday party, but we all knew not to go up to him. And then it was the staff photo. It was an anniversary shoot, so he came in. We did the staff photo, and then I'm like, I need out of here. So then I left Letterman, and then I got a day job on assistant audience coordinator on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And now this is when the show became number one. It was the hottest show on television. I mean, and it changed everything with all Survivor and just other things that weren't situation 3 cameras or single cam. And it was to be there when John Carpenter won the $1 million backstage, and to just see this thing become a phenomenon was another. It was good for me to see stuff like that and be there, and just with the crew and with the staff.
And, I mean, it's interesting because you talk about going and getting a chance to see Bozo as a child, and to be able to be in that audience, and then later in life to be in Letterman ostensibly is probably iconic late night TV for our generation, people who didn't really watch Carson, to get to be behind the scenes for that, and then and watch Millionaire rise to the status that it gained. That must be pretty cool to to have gotten to basically plant a signpost as a child and then meet up with that signpost.
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to be in the sound stage. Give me a sound stage and people creating something good. And then to be on something that was a hit, like Spin City. And then I did get hired. That was my first actual job, part-time. And to be on some of those hits, and just the one thing I had trouble with, though, at Letterman and Millionaire, there were just, I would say more on Millionaire, there were a bunch of, I don't want to say elitist, but there were a lot of people that like were my age or maybe a little above that was just like, I felt like they were in some fraternity sorority and I was not being let in. So it was like, okay, this is a huge hit, and I found my good people. But again, it's like, it's possible to be in an environment where it's a good environment for them, like for the overall, for everybody there. And I didn't think it was possible. Or I wasn't sure it was possible. And then circumstances where I was doing the audience stuff for sitcoms and stuff and just trying to make ends meet while I was pursuing other stuff. And then I remember Tanya Bracco, who's still a producer at Colbert now, at the Colbert Report. I remember reading in the trade Stephen Colbert was going to get his own show, and she called me in to meet with her and Meredith Bennett, who was became the co-EP, and it was such a huge life-changing thing. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. I mean, they hired me as an audience coordinator. That was my job. So they hired me to do audience, but the thing is, I had a full-time gig, supposedly a show that was going to be renewed for a bunch of years, and I quit that show. And people couldn't believe it. It was like 30 test shows. I mean, not 30 test shows, but Comedy Central only gave Colbert an initial 30 shows, 40. If it went well, they were going to extend it, but it was definitely not a surefire thing. But I went with my instinct, knowing a bunch of things. One, Jon Stewart was producing it. Two, Stephen Colbert was hilarious. And, I hadn't done TV in Manhattan in a long time, especially like a comedy that would be like, oh my gosh, this actually sounds fun. And, very quickly, Doug Herzog, they renewed for a year. They gave them a year, and we were on staff when we got the reveal, and it was like just this couldn't believe it. It was like this celebration. Like, we all believed in that show so much. I was there in the soundstage for the 4 test shows, and I'm just watching the rehearsal. Like, I've never been on a show where like people wanted something to succeed so much. Like, obviously we wanted jobs, but there was just something about him and something about what we were doing that we all believed in. And it was one of those rare things that, like, I remember the test shows, a lot of it was airable. Like, those things are supposed to be train wrecks. We had live audience, and like, I remember Jeff Daniels. He interviewed Jeff Daniels, and that actually did make the show. They had to pre-tape him. He's plugging Squid and the Whale, and that got in. But I mean, he had it. I mean, there was Ben Carlin, actually, who was the executive producer of Daily Show, and Colbert was like telling all of us on staff to pay close attention because this almost never happened. The show's almost fully formed.
Wow. And to be there, the genesis of it, that, again, kind of a pretty iconic moment in your life.
Yeah, and like in the beginning, like no one knew who he was, and like it was funny, like fans of the Daily Show, but he was in a household name. Like, people did not know who this man was that was on the Daily Show for 7 years until the show started getting like people. At first, you could get tickets; there was no problem whatsoever, and then it started to get a little bit more popular, and then the correspondence dinner thing. Like, I mean, that's how people like his household name, and it was the shift in terms of the audience, the people that wanted to be there, that started watching the show. It was night and day. I mean, it was like a rock concert, and we had only 107 people in in that studio, and just to kind of see like when Colbert would come out, people would be excited before, but it was like this other level, and I was like basically watching a show. When you don't think it's going to get any bigger, it just kept getting bigger, and again, that's something that doesn't happen very often.
Wow. And at some point you start doing, because it's interesting because, as I mentioned, the Bozo show from childhood, but then eventually you host a show called Two Juice Minimum, which essentially is, a version of a children's show.
Yeah.
When did those start coming about?
Okay, so with the kids stuff, my first actual gig out of NYU, I couldn't get hired for like a month for that first month and a half. So the only thing I could get hired, I went to NYU to see the job listings, was babysitting. I was like, I knew I was good with kids, like with internships and stuff, and like the parents would bring in their kids and like watch them or something. But like I was the babysitter for a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they thought I was hilarious, and I was like, oh, this is good. And then everyone at the playground, all their friends, I would have to take them around, and their friends, like their parents would be like, Mark, my kid wants you to babysit him as well. And I'm like, I don't want to be the babysitter, but just the laughs that would happen. And then when I got to Colbert, people would bring their kids over to the offices sometimes, and I would basically just do this. It turned into like a character, which is it's me, but it's very like the kids give me timeouts and stuff. It's very like this character that I guess engages the kids, but people would tell me at Colbert when they would bring their kids, they said, Mark, the first thing that my son, my daughter wants to do when they come to Colbert is go see you. And it was one of those things where I was just like, I didn't realize that like not everyone could do that. Like it never occurred to me until that Colbert thing that maybe this could be something like this is a skill that maybe I still thought a lot of people could do it. And then just to be able to see the progression of what I was able to do with that show. And then I was teaching Sunday school. Christine and I, my wife, go to church. We teach Sunday school. And to see the same thing with the kids, like go crazy for the character. And just the parents are like, oh, my goodness. And then I started doing some videos, and it was like, it was definitely something where I'm like, this is what I want to do. I know it's probably going to take a while, but this is the path I want to be on, and I did it. It was just so hard. I mean, you were really nice helping me over there with that, but I'm still working on it, believe it or not. It was definitely one of those things that I've been doing for it seems like forever, and I really do believe in it. But that's how Two Jews started. And that was the first time I did it on stage. Was at the Pet, and I'll never forget doing that in front of a bunch of strangers, kids that were strangers, and I knew it worked, but I just had never been on stage. People had only seen videos, and it just, from the moment I walked on, it was the character was formed. It's formed a lot more now, and just it worked. Like the kids, it worked exactly how I wanted it to work, which was so exciting, and it was definitely one of the high points.
But I love how, like, in childhood we have these things for whatever moments of grace that show up, and like, the Bozo show, and then you are in a way becoming that form of a clown for children, and it's almost like the universe is pulling you in with like, here, I'm going to show you you're good with kids through this way. That seems like it's a downer, but turns out to be like a superhero power.
It is. We'd have a long conversation. I just feel like this is appropriate. I don't want to be name dropping stuff, but like from the time I was 2 years old, I was obsessed with Mr. Rogers. Like I'd watch Mr. Rogers as well, and like I remember when I was a kid trying to get like the same sweater that he would wear, the pull-up, like the zipper, and not being able to get it, but I would wear something similar, put on a clip-on tie on my T-shirt, and like flip Mr. Rogers. He was supposed to come to Hershey. It was like when I was 2.5 years old, and he came to my nursery school, We Explorers. But I was in the afternoon session, and he came in the morning, and like I just missing him just for it was like at least like 15, 20 years that like I was just like, I can't believe I didn't miss him. I'd give my mom a hard time, just jokingly, but I always wanted to go to the set in Pittsburgh. It was in my mind. I saw it. I held it in my mind over the years. And it was one of those things, sometimes you just get this feeling, like an instinct. And I had this, this is when I was working at Millionaire. I got a feeling that I had to make it happen. And I called over there and I said that it's a closed set, no one gets in. And I didn't like using the Millionaire name, but I gently mentioned that. And after a bunch of other times just trying to convince them, they let me come to the Mr. Rogers set, and I got to watch Fred Rogers do the puppets. He was wearing all black, and he was doing the puppet voices. Before I got to see that, he was with a Make-A-Wish child singing a song with him. I'm getting emotional now, but to be in that Pittsburgh studio and just the neighborhood of make-believe was set up. So like just walking into that thing before the filming and just being able to take photos and go to the castle and spin Lady Elaine's museum go round and just to go around them. Like I couldn't believe it. Like it was one of the most exciting days, even as an adult. Like when I found out that they were going to let me go there, it was like, I just think that the scream probably hurt her ears. It was a loud scream and calling all my friends with so much excitement, and my friends not really getting it. Like, it's funny now. He's like this guy who, like, now everybody talks about in this fond way, but back then it really wasn't. He wasn't like that. And until he passed away years later, he was like this thing, this icon. But so yeah, I got to go there, and this is the strangest thing. So I get there, and during the taping, you're not allowed. No one's allowed in the to be on the stage. That doesn't work there. So I'm watching it from like I got to be there in the beginning, and then watch everything from like this giant glass plane window, kind of like 8H Saturday Night Live, a big window, and watch everyone rehearse. And after that, I took my mom, which I really wanted to do, and then 4 days later, I'm at reading the morning newspaper, the Patriot News from Harrisburg. I'm in Hershey, and it says Mr. Rogers to retire. And I got it in November. He was gone in December. It's very hard for me looking back to see the timing. Like, I mean, I've had a lot of timing like that, and like so many things in my life delayed stuff I wanted to do, delayed 10 years, 15 years, sometimes even 20 years. That thing, though, specifically to be there, and then he was gone. It still gets me emotional.
I mean, that's a magical story for a 2-year-old to have that, and then to keep it in. I love the keep it in your mind's eye.
It was just something I don't know why. Like even in college, when I was really lonely, I'd watch reruns of Mr. Rogers like 11 a.m. and stuff, and he was just like this. I don't know. There was just something really incredible about that guy that he was able to do for kids and even adults. I think more people should have watched that show, and I think that they should when they're going through some tough times, or people are not being nice to them, and they're just in a certain situation where they don't think things are going to get better. I think that's he's a good person to put on and listen to.
Well, I mean, what a story. I mean, it's just so much. Just the perseverance, the going with your gut, the timing of it. Timing is the one thing you can't teach. That's just intuition. Wow.
I had never been to Pittsburgh. I mean, I'd never been to Pittsburgh, and from where we were, it was like 4.5-hour drive or something like that. So, yeah, that was pretty amazing. So, like, yeah, definitely the kids' shows and stuff is definitely, as you mentioned, definitely an influence because I was really into those shows as a kid. Still am.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm, at a place now where it's like, what do I want to do with the rest of my time, while I'm here? And, I don't know, kids, there seems to be a chance to help them because they're the future, with whatever wisdom or knowledge.
I was over with my young nephews in California, and they were watching stuff, and there is good content out there for kids, but like the stuff that they were watching for the most part and the stuff I was seeing, it was just stuff that even though I watched a lot of junk when I was a kid, there just didn't seem to be a lot, the stuff at least I saw that I thought that I would want to address in the show I would want it to. So that was good to kind of to see that, and it's definitely one of those things that I just wanted to put it out there for the kids, and just I don't want to say some of these shows don't respect the kids. Certainly Sesame Street does, and some of the others, but so many of the shows I saw them watching, it's just clear they're trying to sell toys. I mean, it's just they're doing. It looks to me like the bare minimum, and I don't like the shows or anything that doesn't respect the kids.
The performance art pieces, I don't know what's the best way to call them, but like, going to every Starbucks in a day, sleeping in the airplane for a month, how do those come about in your career?
The stunt videos were just curiosity. I did this one stunt video, which I didn't even know it was going to turn into a thing. It just made me laugh. Like, sometimes it's just like the blank paper, and just like, I'm going to write what I think is funny, and just maybe something will come out. And I had this idea for, and this was a long time ago. Now it would be no big deal. But at the time, I came up with this idea. It'd be funny for somebody to start a Guns N' Roses kids tribute band. So I was the manager, Mark Malkoff, the fictional band. I did auditions, and it was hilarious. The kids were hilarious. They had a lot of fun. We kept it, of course, Guns N' Roses, controversial. We kept it like family friendly, no matter what. And then I was like called CBGBs. We did some videos that were really funny, and then I called CBGBs to be like, could I use your space just for like some interior shots, and like just to kind of make it look like it was real, but we don't want to. Yeah, that's it. I just want to maybe rent something. And they're like, why don't you do a show? And I'm just like, I don't even know if these kids can do anything. Like, it was it was it was the gallery. CBGB's gallery, which was like this really nice space, and I was like, we'll see what happens. I mean, I was like, okay, I'll show my videos, which I know were funny, and then in between, I'll have the kids. I'll play a track and see if the kids, one of them can sing and one of them can play drums or whatever. And the woman I picked, the girl I picked at the time, Alexa, who played Axel, I had no idea she could sing. Her pipes, like when we got on stage, like. I mean, Rolling Stone was there, Spin Magazine. I mean, it was tons of media were there, and it ballooned into this thing where it was in LA and overseas. And it was one of those things, I had no idea, I had no expectations other than I just wanted to do something that I was curious about, that I thought would be funny. And I think that was one of the first ones that I did like that. And that went on for a while. It was hilarious. We were getting like frat houses being like, well, can they play? And I'm like, no. And we got a bunch of TV people calling me to see them, but that never worked, which, it's what it is. But just having like something like that happen, just like curiosity, like I'm always been like that. Like, how is something done? So then I was always, like with certain things, like I'm in Starbucks. I'm in Starbucks all the time just with friends. I didn't drink coffee, as I mentioned. So I just remember, it was that whole cliche. There was like Starbucks across from a Starbucks. And all it started was one question, asking a barista how many there were in Manhattan. And I had no idea. And they had no idea. So I called the Starbucks Corporation, and they have no idea. Like, you'd think that they would know these things, but they weren't sure. And then I got this idea, and I told people about it. Would it be possible to go to every single Starbucks? And first of all, I had to count every store myself, and I had to do all these research going to them. And there was 171 at the time, and I was like, would it be possible to go to every one of these in less than 24 hours, make a purchase, and consume something? And again, I mean, I have somebody I know, like, this is impossible. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I got to prove this thing wrong. I got to make this happen. And we tried it with a car, somebody driving me around, and of course with NYC traffic, that was a bust. So the guy that I was working with after that was like, I'm done. I don't want to do it. He was working with me on it, so I'm like, I have nobody now. And I have to get a director that because then I was like, it has to be done with bicycles. I'd never been on a bike in New York City traffic before. I was terrified to start that, and then I had to get a director who was a bike enthusiast. That was like took a long time, and then we personally went to every single store. We mapped it out, all 171. I think the highest was 145th and Broadway, and then this was the thing that sucked was that every store had different hours. And like I would call them, ask the manager, and or talk to baristas, and they would all give me inaccurate hours. So I had to personally go to every Starbucks, map it, get the hours that it opened, and try to figure out this thing like how we were going to pull this off. Like 4 of them were 24 hours, so like we did those last, but it was definitely a thing where. I didn't know, like, I knew, like, it was possible, but, like, after, like, 11 or 12 hours, I couldn't walk in a straight line because the caffeine and the hot July day, and we had to abandon the bikes, and my friend Jill came in from Brooklyn, thankfully, with a car, and they just, because back after rush hour, you're fine, and I just kind of, I was hyperventilating. It was really, really, really bad in terms of my physical. My director got sick, one of the camera guys threw up. They both got sick. The camera guy, someone got sick when I did the airplane. They got vertigo and someone threw up. So, the director did throw up on that. So it was one of those things where I just kept pushing myself. My wife is like praying and so worried about me because, think about that. Going to a store every 7 minutes for 23 hours straight. It's just still that when I look at that, and I would get a receipt because like, I didn't know at the time the media, if I like sent this to them, that they would I thought I would have to show them all this proof, and I got a receipt from every single store, and I was so out of it. I went to the same store twice on 5 occasions, so double the receipts, and we made it. Like it was one of those things where I don't know if you've seen The Graduate. I'm sure you've seen The Graduate, the movie The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman, and I would get to some of these Starbucks stores. One in particular, really on the east side, where I missed them by like a minute or two, and then you watch the end of The Graduate, where like Dustin Hoffman shows up and is like banging on the glass, Elaine, and just like will not give up. Like he just raced from Elaine's college to this thing, and that was me with this thing, and they were closed by a minute or two, and I just kept knocking politely and be like, I'll give you this amount of money if you open it up and just give me a piece of pound cake. And I kept raising it. I think I got to $50. And finally, because I just wouldn't give up, she wanted to get rid of me. And finally she opened the door, took the $50 and gave me the pound cake. And that was the most expensive pound cake I've ever had. But I got it to count it. And then there was another time at near, where was it? On 42nd Street. And the hours were wrong. They basically, I did the hours, but they were shutting down like an hour earlier. Their times were inaccurate as by Grand Central Station. And again, same thing. I just wouldn't leave. It was like probably like 3 or 4 minutes of me pleading through the glass. And it was one of the smaller Starbucks, and they just could see it through me. And I just was shouting, and they could understand through the glass what I needed to do. And it was one of those things when somebody is that. Like, I'm going to make this happen. Like, I remember in Wall Street, there's like a long line, and I had to make an announcement and apologize and ask people if I could cut the line and just give my plea, and it worked. I mean, it was a real plea. I was definitely this thing that I'm like, I have to make happen no matter what. And barriers that would normally stop people, some of them would stop me too. If I was like a minute late to a store ordinarily, but when somebody just wants something and so bad, they'll go to extremes. So I was able to pull this thing off. Like, I mean, I was in pain for 3 days, probably more than that. And like when I came back, when I was driven back to my place in Astoria, which I still had trouble walking, I mean, I was covered in filth and grime. Like I mean, it was definitely one of those things where I was up for 27 hours on 2 hours sleep because I just was still planning the route, and I was too pumped up, nervous to go to sleep. So I was up for 27 hours, took me 23, and then I just crashed for days and days.
I mean, you're doing this at a time before iPhones. So, like, you got someone
Yeah.
who's filming you with a camera, following you around,
Yeah.
a sound guy. How many people are with you?
Okay, so there were 2 people that started, and then one person got sick. So then it was just one, my director, and then my friend Jill, who was a girlfriend, with the car. So I had 2 people. But you're right. I mean, you had to have like the actual bigger cameras, and it was like the sound equipment and stuff. And it was definitely, I totally forgot about it, but it was true. It was like, and to be able to get somebody a director that do the bike thing, because now you could get any friend that would like find someone that could ride bikes, they could film it on their phone. But there were definitely a lot of hurdles to make this happen. So yeah, we had the videotape. I put it together with a friend of mine edited, and I felt very confident in it. And I had all the receipts, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to send in 2 emails to the Post and the Daily News. I didn't know. I'd never done that. Like, I didn't know how to do a press release or anything, but I sent it. And, like, they both wanted it right away. Like, they couldn't believe this, and they wanted to take photos. And I think it was the Daily News that got to me first, so I had to give it to them. And the Post is like, it doesn't matter. We'll do it too. But I told the Daily News, and that is the thing that got me on the Today's Show. It got me. Leno was doing doing a monologue joke about me, and then showed my Today Show appearance where Leno's like, I think the guy still is caffeined up, and they fast forwarded my Today Show appearance with Lester Holt to make me talk really fast like this. So it was like, yeah, I was on CNN. So that was crazy. Like, I had no expectations other than I just wanted people to see the video. So that's how a lot of those stunt videos, the big ones, started, and it was purely accident. Like, I mean, I just thought it'd be cool if people in New York, some people would maybe watch my video. But and of course the media, I have all the receipts with me, and the media doesn't care. they do not care to look over everything, and that propelled me into IKEA, which happened like 6 months later, to convincing the corporation, which took a long time to let me live and stay there for a week.
But even something like the Starbucks, you're doing that, you're funding it yourself. Even 171 Starbucks at $5 each, you got close to $900 just in Starbucks bills that day.
I had a day job at Colbert at the time, so what happened is I was definitely losing money, but basically with any purchase, so they weren't off coffee. I remember getting biscotti a bunch of times and waters and stuff, but I had to get a purchase, but I definitely was losing money on everything I did for like comedy wise. But before then, I looked at it as like, I just have to do this as an investment, but I even not an investment, I have to do this. So I just remember rehearsing. That's hilarious. Doing the routes before Colbert, and then I would just bike from wherever I was over to 54th between 10th and 11th and carry my bike up into the offices. And it was having like one job full time, doing this on the side and being married. It was definitely a challenging time.
And was that at a time where you could put a video on YouTube and get enough views to monetize it, or not yet?
No, there was none. It didn't exist. I mean, YouTube was still at this place where it was almost apologetic if you put your stuff out there. So that I did put the stuff out there, and it did well. I should have put it on YouTube right away. It would have gotten like at least a couple million views, but the way I did it was I just didn't really see the value in YouTube at the time, and honestly, nobody really did until maybe like, I don't know, a year later. So, but yeah, that's what I did.
But that gave you the Today Show at CNN and Leno, and it propelled you to have resources to do the IKEA one and the AirTran, or you still were all funding it yourself?
Oh my goodness, IKEA was like, I convinced them. They finally said yes, and then I didn't. They're like, I'm like, so you're gonna send out the press release, and they're like, Mark, you don't understand. You have complete 100% control. We trust you. You could do some serious damage, but we trust you 100%. So I was thinking like I get some budget, but I had zero budget. Like, I mean, this was like, I knew it was going to be big, but I mean, it was global. I mean, it was IKEA later told me it was the most publicity they ever got in the United States up until that point. I mean, my friend in Italy was reading about it. It was in Japan. It was on the Associated. It was on the AP Wire. So it was like this media thing. It was I kind of couldn't believe it, but I had 2 weeks to put something together and just talk with my enthusiasm to friends I knew and some people I didn't, why this was going to be special and why they should do it. And again, it was one of those desperations. I remember calling Starbucks to try to get them to like give me some money to advertise in all these other places, and like none of them would give me money. Like I couldn't get anybody to give me a cent. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose money, but I need a crew. I need a lot of people on this. So, you know, I was able to do that. I was able to have people over there with me, two sets of teams and stuff that were there with me 24 hours a day. At least they would trade off. Being in the back room, we'd film something. Be in the back room, they'd edit it, and then we would get it on as soon as possible. And yeah, that was definitely something where people are like, and I still do this sometimes. People are like, well, I can't do this. I don't have any money or any budget that I think back to, and that definitely was. That was definitely this thing that people knew who I was. And the first time I actually got paid was that led to me living on an airplane for 30 days. And that was my first branded thing and the first time that, I was getting paid and didn't lose money. And it felt really, really good.
Okay, so then AirTran comes in and says, look, we like what you're doing. We'll give you money to come and live on our plane for a month as a bid.
Yeah, they wanted to promote their go-go Wi-Fi. Like, it was like this revolutionary thing where you could have Wi-Fi on an airplane. I just remember, like, people, as friends, people in the industry, just, like, sending me a Facebook message and like, Mark, are you seriously right now on a plane flying in the air? I'm like, yeah. And so that's what they wanted. What I wanted was video content. And I told them it can't just be a guy plugging Wi-Fi. I had a genuine fear of flying. I had this idea before they did. I had the treatment set up. I wanted to do it with Richard Branson because I thought it would be the best fit. And everyone, of course, is like, there's no way they're going to let you live on the plane. So when they asked me to do this, I was like, I sent them ideas right away because I had all these video ideas. I wanted the videotape. So I told them it has to be about something, which the reason I wanted to originally do it with Richard Branson is I had a genuine fear of flying. Like, it was real. It was not good. And again, in my head, sometimes with work, it's extreme. And I was trying to ask myself, how could I possibly get over my fear of flying? And the thing that kept coming back to was, like, you have to force yourself to fly over and over and over and over again. And that's how I came up with that idea. And when they came up with the idea just to have me on the plane, I'm like, it has to be about something. And that was the narrative. I'm like, this is the narrative. A guy that's living on there for a month to try to get over his fear of flying and having a good time. They wanted me to show having a good time, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this thing. So it was really quick. Like, I had to go down to Atlanta and take all these tests at the FBI background check. It was pretty out there. How long it took for it all to happen. Once it finally was like, okay, we're going to do this, and Ali, it was the most bizarre thing. I got this license. I had to take a test where I could walk unaccompanied on the tarmac in Atlanta at is it like the busiest airport in the world? I have a sleeping bag in my pillow and my suitcase, and I'm walking around with nobody. And like people like that work there, like they just stop what they're doing and stare and are just in disbelief. And they said, "Let me see your SIDA badge." Because that's protocol, and then they would see it, and they just couldn't believe it. This was what they first didn't know what I was doing. Then I'd ask to see their side of badge, and I would look, and they're like, okay. And so it was an odd thing. I mean, I couldn't shower for a month. I had to use baby wipes. They flew my wife Christine on the weekends to get her flights with me just to see me. I had to. I never went into public or an airport for the entire month. I slept alone on the plane at night. TSA would come on, and this is when it was grounded in Atlanta. TSA would come on and turn on all the lights, like, I don't know, every 5 hours or something, and be like, Mark, are these your items? I said, yes, it's my suitcase. And okay, Mark, go back to sleep. And I only got off the plane in the morning. What I would do is I'd go on the tarmac and then I'd get onto another plane. They would fly all over the United States, land in Atlanta. Then they would get me off a plane and put me on another plane where I would sleep. But I was getting like 2-3 hours of sleep. Like the cleaning crew would take 4 or 5 hours to clean the plane sometimes. I mean, they were disgusting by the end of the day. So, and then they had me just doing media, and then I was just trying to do as much of video content as I could. But that psychologically was the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, by far. I mean, it was definitely one of those things where I hit the 1 month mark. I was like, okay, I can see that this is going to be over and I do this, because just being there nonstop, it definitely affected me, and probably not in a good way. I still could do the videos fine, and people liked them and they were fun, but people had no idea how hard it was psychologically.
And like, after how many plane trips or how many days was the flying no longer an issue in terms of your fear of flying? How long did it take to become inured to flying?
I would say a week and a half, and the only reason that it only took a week and a half is all the pilots and the flight attendants wanted to meet me, and like they just couldn't believe I was afraid to fly, and like I didn't really understand when they're like, no, I'm not afraid, you shouldn't be either. I was waiting for one of them to just kind of break and just be like, actually, this is not safe. And the pilots would just be like, Mark, what is wrong? And I explained my specific issues, and they would all just take time out, and they would just very kindly, gently address everything. They're like, Mark, all turbulence is being in the ocean and going over a wave. It's you're on a bike and you're going over gravel. Like, it is good to have turbulence. If you don't have turbulence, that's when you have to worry. And basically they were just able to take me through that stuff, and like all of them would say the same thing. And I'd say after a week and a half, like, I mean, I would get nervous here and there, but like, yeah, it was definitely night and day. And then the thing I didn't anticipate is so many people in the U.S. emailing me for advice on how, because these are people that had a real phobia. I mean, I was afraid, but you can't even compare. These were people that would email me that told me that they would get airline tickets and not show up to the flight. They would eat the money. I mean, these were people that just couldn't walk into an airport. And I was just trying to explain what happened with me, and some people they told me it really helped. And one woman said she cried when she read what they told me, and like just kind of relief and stuff. So yeah, that was something I didn't expect.
Wow. And then, the Carson podcast, where you get this idea, where does it come from that you want to talk to the people who had been guests of Carson or part of the Johnny Carson show?
In my personal opinion, Carson is up there in terms of like figures with like historical figures, JFK and Disney. I mean, Carson was the most famous man in America for 30 years, and there was so little about him, like in terms of like what went on behind the scenes of the Tonight Show and him. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't know, 5 or 6, my dad would let me, and I know I did this when I was in Illinois, let me stay up on Fridays and watch Carson, and politics was over my head, but it was just like this party, and it was like when he had animals on, when he had kids on, and the comedy sketches, which some of it I got, some of it I didn't. It was just like this world, and I then like when VCRs became a thing shortly, I taped Carson. And I would try to read everything I possibly could on Carson, but like in terms of like there were these books that some people that had, and it was not a lot of people that really had bad experiences with Carson that Carson fired for the most part. These really books that were just like people that just didn't like him, kind of like having an axe to grind, in my opinion. Those were the only books, and I was like, who is this guy for real, and what went on behind the scenes? Because the very final Carson on May 22nd, 92, it was the first time they showed a 7-minute behind the scene, what went on, and still after that, I'm like, I have to know more. And I never met anybody, even in comedy, that was so into Carson. Like, people would be into him, but my thing was just way, way more. So when Peter Jones came up with this documentary in 2012, I think, I watched it, I devoured it. A lot of people in comedy did. I mean, it was this big thing, and it was the closest thing to who Carson was. But after that, after 2 hours, I'm like, I had so many questions. I still wasn't satisfied. I sat down with Peter Jones, the director, and I told him the idea I had. I said, I wanted your doc to go on for hours and hours and days. He's like, Mark, people won't sit through more than 2 hours. I told him the idea that I was going to do this Carson podcast because, like, what went on behind the scenes? Like, even when I was a kid, my dad would tell me that, like, they'd arrange what the guests were going to talk about, and I was like, who has a job like that? Like, how does that happen? Like, who's holding the curtain open for Johnny? It was like one thing after another question from when I was a kid up until that point, and I didn't think two things. I didn't think many people were going to talk to me just based on Joan Rivers' narrative that he was like this really terrible man, which we both know if people repeat something over and over again, even if it's not true, a lot of times people start to believe it. And she was the biggest mouthpiece, and so was the lawyer Henry Bushkin. So that's what America believed. I probably thought that it wasn't going to go well in terms of what people had to say, and then many people would talk to me. But for the first time, and this happened very quickly, I was talking to people that knew him that never talked publicly, people that worked at the show, people that were guests on the show. And so many of them were saying these things about him, like the kindness and what he would do for very quietly. He didn't want any press charity-wise, and how generous he was to the comedians during the commercials when they weren't filming to punch up their jokes. And other than the alcohol, he had an alcohol issue, which he was public about. Other than that, and not being a good husband or father, it was like night and day. Like, I mean, it was just like this person who the media made him out to be J.D. Salinger, and it was not true. I mean, none of it was true. I couldn't believe it. And then you still have people that believe the Joan Rivers narrative. And then you start talking to people that worked on the show. Like, these are all separate people I'm talking to. And you start hearing from the Carson camp what actually happened with the Rivers thing. And Carson was too classy to really say anything other than I just would have handled it differently. That's all. And then you hear, you know, Joan has this narrative that's a couple sentences, and that's what she kept repeating. And you start hearing from other people, and it's just night and day. And it definitely became this thing, like what went on behind the scenes. And then that's what I was curious about, what went on behind the scenes in Carson's professional life. And then it became a lot more of who he was. And it was definitely, people couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And still to this day, people still believe Bushkin and Rivers. I mean, they were both people in his life that betrayed him. I mean, betrayed him really. He was really hurt and wounded by both of them, but they basically played it up. She would play up she was just a terrible man, and he basically had, in my opinion, a lot of people had an axe to grind with Carson. I mean, Carson fired him for very good reason, and then the lawyer, and then basically his entertainment career was over in terms of like all like the A-listers and stuff and hanging out at all the restaurants. And Carson cut him off because he had to. And I thought both of them, they were the biggest megaphones, were the two people that had access to grind. And his friends were too classy, I think, to sit, because Carson didn't want really anybody to talk while he was alive. So a lot of people didn't. But once he passed, like his friends for the first time would talk, because they wouldn't talk to like authors before because Carson didn't want them to. So nobody knew like this guy who he was. And then you have all these people that their careers were made that are crying to me. Like, I mean, it's like this most emotional thing. So there's just a lot of layers to this thing. And I had no idea that there were that many people interested in Carson. I mean, podcast, it was still pretty new podcast. I mean, it's been around like a year or two, a couple of years. But I'm like, no one's going to listen to this thing. And then it started going around, and then all the late night shows started listening. And, you know, it is this very niche thing. And it's not like we don't have like crazy big numbers, but we definitely have a loyal following. And it was definitely, I did this out of my curiosity. I didn't think people were going to listen. And then it was almost an accident that all these huge names started talking to me. I didn't think it didn't occur to me they'd talk to me. But then what I didn't foresee is that if you went to a college or a high school that you had the best experience at, but you never get to talk about it publicly, more for like a minute or two. Like comedians talk about Carson once for 2 minutes, but they have like 45 minutes or an hour or more to talk about like this thing that happened, which was one of the greatest memories of their life and what the show and he did. People that normally wouldn't talk were talking to me. I just couldn't believe it. Like really big names that are like, the only reason I'm doing this is because it was Johnny and I love him, which again, I thought it would be maybe 10 episodes. Maybe Dick Cavett would do it, and probably all unknown. And it just turned into this other thing.
I mean, the people you've talked to, Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
That's the amazing thing. I mean, and you're still doing it. You're over, 150 now? Am I right?
Gosh, we've been 275.
270. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is well, there's a bunch of things, but I mean, the show went off the air in '92, so like the people that did it as kids, like Jason Bateman and Neil Patrick Harris, when they were kids, now they are. I mean, the people that did their kids are like in their 40s, early 50s. So like the guests that were doing it, so many just keep passing away on my list. I mean, it got into the point where it's just been really challenging. I've been able to do it, but the names are running out. So I don't know how much longer I'll be doing it. But yeah, a lot of people, like Mel Brooks. The first thing he said, he's like, I almost do none of these. I'm like, I am well aware. It's only because Carson, and I didn't realize that. Like, I mean, if I would have realized that, I would have started the podcast way earlier just to like make contacts and stuff. But that was just out of pure love, and people have been very, very generous to me, the listeners and the guests.
And you do it yourself in terms of calling people and setting it up and doing the recording and all of that?
My wife, Christine, edited the first, I think, 100 or 2, and we were losing money. We didn't make any money. The first year we lost money. And that's when I told people I can't do this consistently, and that's when I launched Patreon, and they were in some GoFundMes, and they're the ones that really allowed me to go to California to do as many as I could in person. So Christine was editing them. I was guest booking everything. I didn't know what I was doing at first, but it was just a lot of information on the internet. Like I was trying to go out like try to like come out like public things, like trying to figure out ways to get to people that normally like wouldn't be completely obvious. Like I would send like the whitepages.com and I'd send letters to certain people that were well known, and they would just get right back to me, so I didn't have to deal with publicists or agents. And it was a lot of letter writing and just kind of guessing people's email address and just asking somebody that knew someone to put them together. So I booked everything. Peter Jones, actually, who did the documentary, when I was like, Peter's like, you need to do this, Mark. And I was like, who should I have on? He's like, you want Carl Reiner's home number? I'm like, yeah. It's like I write it down. He's like, you want Doc Severinson's cell number? And he gave me a few of those things, but it was one of those things that the seas parted right in front of me. And that's how it started. And then it was just like the detective work. Like Mel Brooks, his assistant's email, at least 5 hours of figuring out what the email was. And I did get to it eventually, but it was at least 5 hours of just like trying different combinations and doing research and finding out even who his assistant was. So definitely the hours I've spent, hundreds of hours trying to find people and track people down. And still some people won't do it. Like Bob Newhart won't do it. Bette Midler won't do it. I mean, there's a huge section of people like Letterman who just he doesn't like doing the comedy stuff, or Seinfeld will only do sports and car podcasts. So I definitely have a gigantic list that I still want, but I don't know. I still ask. Like some of the guests took like 4 or 5 years to get them to say yes. But so that's the podcast. That definitely has taught me a lot too. Just I'm trying to locate people and then approach them in a friendly, nice manner in which they're comfortable with.
Wow. And so is that one of the primary things you're doing right now?
I am actually, and I think depending on when this is going to come out, I'm just going to tell you, and if it comes out sooner, I might have to edit out. But I'm currently producing a 6-episode podcast for CNN about the history of late night, hosted by Bill Carter, who wrote The Late Shift, and he was at the New York Times for 25 years. So there's the docu-series, which has been announced, is coming out. That's 6 episodes on CNN, and this is a companion piece. So I've been doing that, which has been really good. The podcast is going to be really fun, and the series is nice too. It's really strong too. So I've been doing that. I'm doing the Carson podcast, working on side projects, and just trying to generate stuff that I like and trying to make a living through that. But the podcast, the Carson thing, it's like every week it needs to be done. It's like when I'm busy, I still need to track somebody down, and it's definitely never ends. And those things can get to be a lot. I mean, I think I had like 14 done in the can before I launched, which really helped. But it's like no matter how busy I am, I still, the ship's still sailing, and I still need to get that to make it happen, which some weeks is really tough. Because I'm sure doing this when life gets hard, but you still, if it's weekly and you tell the listeners it's weekly, I feel like I owe that to them.
And so, like, if you could wave a magic wand for yourself and, you basically get to do whatever you want, whatever kind of project, whether it's, in front of the camera, behind the camera,
mm-hmm.
what would it be for you right now?
100% the kids show, 100%. There's not, I would try to think, like, what number 2 would be. Like, I mean, I'm good at a few things. Like, I think most people are good at like a few things. I think most people actually are really better than most people at something, but people can't recognize it sometimes, and it's not always like an occupation. But I know people that can just do things that almost nobody can do, but they don't care about it. This is a thing that I know I can do better than anything else I've ever done. Like I'm a good interviewer. I can do some good things that I know I'm better at than a lot of people. But this thing, to me at least, is something that I just know that that's the thing I do better than anything. And I think probably just growing up kid-wise, my childhood too, I guess the shows were very important to me. So yeah, that would be number 1.
So getting 2 Juice Minimum out there in some way, shape, or form.
I'm working on it now, believe it or not. I have. I mean, I've definitely had some progress, and it's definitely organically involved. Like the best thing about having something for that long is it's definitely turned into something that it wasn't in terms of the character and in terms of like the format and the sketches and just a lot of stuff for the best. But yeah, that would be it. But, I mean, I am the guy. Like, I mean, just because like that's who I am. So yeah, hosting it, it's pretty much created, and then just doing it for as long as I'm supposed to do it. I'm a big prayer. I believe in God, and just kind of I mentioned that before, Christine and I teach Sunday school. So I think it's one of those things where when God gives people gifts, I think it's good for people to at least try to recognize, and not everyone can, but in this case, there's no other answer like why I can do this with the kids comedy thing so well, and have parents that don't know me and like write me and be like, my kids can't stop talking about your comedy show. Like all they want to do is this. And like I was in LA, and some parents just like work stuff. They're like the next day they're like, my kid asked for you to come over and stuff, and I'm like, well, of course not. But so I just know that that's the thing that God, and some people can say whatever they want, they don't believe in God or whatever the universe has given me, and I think it's important. Like hearing kids laugh to me, laugh is like, it's like the best sound to me. It's like my favorite noise, my favorite sound, just because I think when I was a kid, and I think everyone was a kid, I just remember things like I would definitely have a lot of like excitement and happiness, but there was definitely, being a kid, adults belittle it sometimes. Like when they see like a kid crying, like a 3-year-old, because they don't get what they want. But adults do that all the time, like something that they don't get equivalently. And they just make this huge deal out of it. I think that a lot of times adults don't see that the pain that the kids can have. I see it on the street all the time, and yeah, they have everything taken care of for them, but it's still real to the kid when they don't necessarily get what they want, why they can't stay up, why they can't see their best friend on this day. So I definitely remember having a lot of that, and just having those kid shows just bring comfort to me, especially Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, and some of those other kid shows. So I guess if I had to verbalize it, yeah, in so many words, that would be it.
Well, I mean, I'm just listening to you thinking, like, because I have this, you teach Sunday school. Have you ever thought about trying to partner up with something like a Joel Osteen type network and making it a Sunday show?
That's a really good question. The show is no religion whatsoever. I mean, it's definitely kids that are like, it's definitely, there are organic elements, because my character misbehaves where like the kids are like learn stuff, but like I never wanted to do whatsoever desire to do it like that, like for whatever reason, to do a religious thing. It doesn't work with the character, it doesn't work with the show. I have done it. I mean, I've workshopped it since in a bunch of other places. I did it was like 150 people to this place. I did last year, and it went really well. I mean, the kids like that are regulars came, but like most of them didn't know who I was, and it was just it couldn't have gone better with that. So I think you're right. Maybe just thinking about maybe a right fit for some people, and I've had some conversations. We'll see what happens. I feel really, 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 really good these days. It's, with everything going on, which is horrendous, and like I know people that have lost people with the corona, and it's just as tough as it's been. I try to find optimism, and I think we all do. And I feel this year that with everything that is going on, good things are going to happen. A lot of parents actually with the pandemic have contacted me and being like, "You need to do the kids shows. The kids need this." And that's just a few parents. I don't know if that's true for a lot, but that's one of the reasons. Like right now, I'm filming new episodes, and just working on it in a digital way to soon get those out.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's like, obviously Fred Rogers affected you and changed the course of your life. And you see these little, touchstones and bifurcations, points along the way from, dressing like him or seeing him on TV and then ultimately getting to meet him. So if you can help one kid like that out there, change their life and, brighten their day, that's something.
I just think laughter is such an important thing. And kids laugh. They do laugh. But this is, I think, just something for like entertainment-wise that just parents have told me they've never seen their kids laugh like it before. And I do want to mention, for Mr. Rogers, I was on the set. I got to see him do everything, but I did not meet him because the Make-A-Wish kid that was there. I took a step back, and I did not meet him. The Make-A-Wish kid, who obviously should be there, and I was lucky just to kind of like be there. But yeah, he was the one that got time with Fred Rogers, as he should, and sang. And I just kind of like was in the corner, just kind of taking it all in.
I remember before the pandemic, there were some theater chairs that were being given away. And I was like, all right, these are beautiful chairs. Let me go see if I can put them in the pit loft. And I thought it was at the Lee Strasberg Institute. I think it's on 14th Street. But it was right next. It was right next door. There was this other door, and you walked in, and it was this gigantic 250-seat soundstage for some religious network. And a very nice gentleman ran the. It was unbelievable. It was one of those New York moments where you're like, I've walked by this place all the time. I'm just here to look at these theater chairs you're throwing away, and there is a legitimate theater soundstage in here. I can't remember what it's called, TSI, TCI, or something, but it's right beside Lee Strasberg. So, I mean, maybe that's the place to reach out.
It's by Irving Plaza. Yeah, maybe. Again, like, I mean, just maybe because it's family friendly, they'd be good. But Yeah, no real religious thing, but family friendly. I know just a lot of those places are interested, but yeah, isn't that like that's New York? Sometimes we have these moments where stuff like that happens, and you're just like, I can't believe that this is what's inside. That does happen every so often. Not too much anymore, but yeah, those moments are fun when it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, thank you. I mean, I just love listening to you. You've got such a great, gentle, sweet spirit about you, but it doesn't, it belies your hard work and perseverance and all that it's taken for you to get here, and it's inspiring, So, again, I don't know what's going to happen with these. I don't know if this is anything beyond a phone call between you and I,
That's fine with me. I'm
but it's
glad we got to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, this came for me out of a sense of I've got to do something while this is happening. And I've been kind of just doing it in terms of letting the universe guide me. And then I was talking to Will Papora, and he's like, you should talk to Mark Malkoff. He does the Carson podcast. And he was like, he's helping, Gilbert Gottfried, getting all these guests for Gilbert Gottfried's show. And I was like, sure, yeah, love to talk to Mark.
I'm glad you did it. Yeah, I got Gilbert a handful of people. Frank Santapadre, and for Gilbert then to do my podcast, I had to bring him a sandwich to his home, pay for a sandwich that he dictated what kind of sandwich, and that's for real. But that's Gilbert, and he's really, really funny. But it's one of those things I want to mention, and I think it's just like obvious, but I don't think it is for a lot of people. Listen, my parents were very encouraging. They supported me. I was able to get up to New York, to go to New York City when I was in high school. I mean, they supported me, my endeavors, encouraged. I mean, they haven't supported my endeavors like once I started making money and doing well, and once I had a day job in television. But that encouragement, you just can't put a price on. And having those opportunities just to be in New York and all those other things, yeah, I definitely was and am privileged.
Well, I think it's worth noting. I mean, that's part of what this is about, giving people a chance just to give shout-outs to, people along the way who definitely encourage them and to inspire others to be that, beacon for other people as they take this journey. But, whatever I can do to help in any way, whatever I still oversee that can help you, or if you want to ever teach a class through the pit, or anything I can do to help you, man, I think the world of you. And, if I could wave a magic wand and put you on that sound stage where 2 Juice Minimum is your, ship to sail as far as you want, I would definitely do that if I had green light capabilities anywhere.
I really appreciate it. That's so nice. I'm glad you're doing these. And, the pit definitely was one of those places. It was such a great community. I'm not singling out other places because other places are fine and they're great, but to be there, it was definitely the place where I walked in and stuff. I felt the most comfortable and just the most, genuine community. So yeah, you've done such a good job with it, and I'm glad we got to do this.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate your time, and like I said, feel free to call me anytime I can be of service. Oh,
thanks. No, I really, really appreciate that and the invites for the pit. We'll see what happens. Just with everything, it's hard to envision stuff getting to be normal. Well, it won't be normal, but back to the way that they are. But I'm looking forward to that day, and definitely, I'm glad we got to do this.
Thank you, Mark. Have a great day, buddy.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Well, that was Mark Malkoff. What a sweet guy. What a sweet guy. If you get a chance, check out Mark Malkoff, Malkoff, MARK.com. 2 Juice Minimum, the Carson podcast, the stunt videos that he's done. But what a nice guy. It's fun to do these things. I get to listen, and sure, I get to hear things about comedy and people's bifurcation points, but I always learn something ultimately that it seems like I need to hear right at that time when I'm talking to the person. Something about it may take 20 years. You have to carry it in your mind's eye. It's been amazing. So I'm grateful. If you're still listening, I thank you. Check out thepit-nyc.com for classes and shows, classes online right now, and hopefully someday IRL. I hope this finds you healthy. If you're not healthy, I hope you get healthy. And once you get healthy, I hope you appreciate your health. It's the most important thing, to be able to draw a deep breath when so many people in this world can't breathe. Wherever this is finding you, good night, sweet dreams, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. But I hope you're well, and I hope to meet you someday in the real world. Safe travels until we meet again. So long.
Thanks for listening to Global Comedy Studios. Is this a bad time to talk? Stay tuned for more.